Fellow Falcoholics, what is up? Welcome to another episode of Falcons Trench Talk here in the Dirty Birds and Brews podcast. I'm joined by my co-host, Jordan Watkins. He's at Big 75, fella, host of the Falcons Fade podcast and fellow contributor over at the Falcoholic like myself. And I'm Kevin Knight, in case you don't know who I am. But at this point in the season, I figure it's probably like 99%, people coming, return viewers. But for the 1% that are joining us for the first time, welcome. But Jordan, we're entering week 16. How are we doing?
I feel like that intro was perfect and fitting because the Falcons also don't know who they are to an extent. And as that's the best way I can put it, coming off of this, I always keep wanting to say coming off of a loss to a 1-win team, but that's not true. They're a 2-win team now.
They are now.
But
yeah.
They are now. But coming off of a loss to a 2-win team, I mean, you almost feel like you're in a twilight zone, right? Like it's not a sad or disappointed. It's just like what just happened, right? So that's just kind of where I am right now, just in a fog.
Yeah, stuck in a fog. I mean, I wish it was that gentle for what I think about the way this team is playing. But yeah, I mean, they're definitely without direction. They're definitely lost and floundering around without direction. That much is very certain. But guys, we're gonna get into this Panthers game a little bit. We're not going to spend too much time on it because, it is kind of what it is. And we're going to spend more time, of course, talking about the news that came out today on Tuesday, which actually ended up working out that we recorded this on Tuesday because Tuesday morning news came out that the Falcons are going back to Taylor Heinicke, which is, if that's not the clearest sign yet, that Arthur Smith has gone from safe to boiling hot. What do they say around the NFL podcast? The hot, but he's accelerating up the hot butt rankings. Yeah, not hot butt in terms of sexual thing. It's more of like the hot seat. But I like the way they frame that. But we'll talk about the game, but of course we'll talk about the quarterback change again and just kind of the situation right now where this team is and what we think is going on and what our sort of thoughts are on the overall dark cloud that's hanging over this whole thing. I know everyone can feel it. The national media can feel it. Everyone can get a taste of this. Before we get started, though, guys, I want to bring you a quick word from today's sponsor, betonline.ag. Folks, all the major sports are in action this week with the college football playoffs ready to kick off, and BetOnline is your number one destination for all your sports wagering info, including news for pro football, the NBA, upcoming fights, and NHL games this season. Again, don't bet on the Falcons. Don't bet with your heart. Never do that as a mistake. I mean, I've done this far too many times this season, so I'm warning you right now. But if you won't take my advice, or perhaps you want to bet on something else, definitely head to that website, betonline.ag today, to get into the action and see all the updated odds for the week. Remember to use our promo code when you sign up. It's BELIEVE, BLEAV, to receive your 50% welcome bonus on your first deposit. BetOnline, where the game starts. All right, Jordan.
Well, we can look at it this way, though. Just in the worst case scenario, if you bet on the Falcons, you get a free move to Jacksonville.
There you go. Oh man, this damn team. All right, well let's get the somewhat good out of the way first with the defense. They hold the Panthers to 9 points. They give up that late field goal drive, but again, I just can't get mad at the defense when they hold a team to under 10 points. Like, this is the NFL. It's really rare to hold a team under 10 points. It's an exceptional defensive performance when that happens. And it was a far from perfect game, but again, they're without their two best interior players by a mile, who just happen to also be their two best pass rushers. And they're, going into this game undermanned. They've got some moving pieces in the secondary. And it wasn't perfect, but I think they did more than enough. And, they did give up some stuff on the ground, but again, you're missing your big contributor on the inside. I think we saw some interesting things. The one thing I do want to mention is the love affair with Mike Hughes is not over. And in fact, D. Alford was benched for this game, and Mike Hughes played the entire game. He played 60 snaps as the slot corner. And that's the one big question I have. But other than that, kind of an interesting game. We did see a lot of players that we hadn't seen a ton of play, like the Joe Gaziano comes in. And I thought acquitted himself well. I think PFF agrees with me. I'd have to pull that up to check, but Calais Campbell playing great, Taquan Graham, having his best game of the year. Curious your thoughts. Let's start with the trenches because that's our namesake. But
of course,
before we head to the Mike Hughes slander, as my UCF legend, if anyone, I can slander him. Okay, he's mine. But what did you think about these young players stepping up in the trenches here?
Well, I mean, young and old, right?
Yeah.
It was a valiant effort because I got to give the Calais Campbell shout out in there. Like I say, he's 37 going on 26 with how he plays. But another strong effort up front. Guys played hard. I thought for the most part, they did a good job of keeping Bryce Young in the pocket. There were some moments where they let him get outside, and that's where he made some big completions, which was it was frustrating in that regard, and I'll get to that more in a second. But at least on the ground, I felt like it was another situation that we talked about in weeks past, right? The recurring pattern of she got worn down, and that's what it seemed like because it felt like another game where the opposing team, this week it's Carolina, opposing team, they didn't really get that much on the ground earlier on in the game, but as the game goes on, because lack of depth. You're just bringing back Laquale London. So,
yep.
It's good to see him back. But, it's you just after a while you get worn down and that's where some of those chunk yardage starts to pop up on the ground, right? So that's why that's so disappointing. And then again, like I said, in pass rush situations, you can't have a combination of both in terms of you can't not bring the quarterback down in terms of getting sacks, and then also not contain him in the pocket.
Yeah.
You can't you can't have both. And so that's why, for me, it was whether it's you have your ends that rush past the upfield shoulder of the quarterback, or you're not getting enough push in the interior, which means that those pockets open up for him to scramble through a B gap, whether it's on the left side or the right side. There was a little bit of a mix of both that started to pop up, especially later in that game. So that was frustrating. And I'll say this for the D-line, but I guess also it's for the defense as a whole. Because you're 100% right. Holding a team without a touchdown, holding a team to 9 points, it's very valiant. And I hate saying this, but it's the unfortunate reality just with where the offense is. I have to view this defense subjectively in terms of there have been a few times now, a few weeks in a row, you've had a chance to seal this game, right? You get the stop here, stop there, game's over, we win. We can still criticize the offense, right, for not why are you making the defense work this hard and do this and do that? But, you don't get a chance to do that. We always had this this saying at Stanford, strain to finish, right? This is what it's all about. You got to find a way to finish. And sadly, this defense is not finishing.
Yeah.
And again, it sucks to hear that. I know people are going to tune into this, but geez, you're being so harsh for a group that only gave up 9 points. You're right. I am. The sad thing is they can only give up 6 points in a game like this, right? So as crazy as it, I'm saying that, it's like I said, but it's one of those things where, again, I think you can see, especially up front, they're just getting worn out.
Yeah.
Because they're right back on the field. The injuries are what they are. But yeah, because when the injuries, you don't have rotation. You don't have a rotation. Like that was the reason why we're so excited about coming into the year, right? It's like, oh yeah, Grady, David Onyemata, all those guys up front. But then it's, hey, Taquan Graham had to be a starter for us last year. Now he's a rotational guy, right? And like you said, this is the best he's looked this year. So I think he's getting confidence and gaining strength back in that ACL, which is great to see. Like I'm really happy for him. You're missing Contavious Street, who once we got him in the trade, dude's been great.
Great rotational guy in there.
Exactly.
I mean, they've built like a good amount of depth. It's just been that's the one position that's just been slammed over and over again with injuries, and it just sucks.
Exactly.
somehow Calais Campbell is the Iron Man who just 37 years old. This man does not miss time.
He's incredible, man.
He is. Incredible. I hope we can convince him to come back next year. We might have to do something to do that, probably to convince him to come back here specifically. But
we got to get him on the show. That's
you got to get him. I don't know. That's generally been the kiss of death, honestly, for guys.
Oh no.
Yeah. Unfortunately, we had like Josh Harris on. We had Kurt Benkert. We had. It's been the kiss of death. Foye, now Foye, yeah.
It'd be a lot of fun to have Kurt Benkert on now.
It would. I mean, we're gonna try to get Kurt if you're listening, bud. We'd love to have you on again. But he's so much fun, and he does this for a living now. Not a slight at all. He's crushing it. He's doing a great job with his show.
I'm just saying he's gonna keep it real with you about what he thinks about the offense. That's what I'm saying. Like,
I already know what he thinks. We know what he thinks. He has not hidden his thoughts at all. He's like maybe a little bit biased too, given what happened when the new regime came in. But understandable. But yeah, it's great to see Taquan get back to where he was. I think starting to play last year. And see like, okay, now that he's getting healthier, maybe we can depend on him again as a guy in the rotation, which is what we were hoping for. But you just never know the timeline of those injuries. It's just very tough to predict. You mentioned Lakeil London. It was great to see him back out there. He played 40 snaps. He looked ready to go. He looked like he was back to what we had gotten before his injury, which is great to see as well. We finally got to see Joe Gaziano play. I thought he was a plus. I mean, I don't think it was, magnificent or anything, but I think he was solid. He had a pressure. He had a couple tackles. I think he had a run stop in 22 snaps. I mean, that, I'm questioning why he's not playing more. I hope he does continue to play more if there are more injuries. It was nice to see Zach Harrison get his first career sack. Yeah. That's what you look at his athletic testing. You're like, this guy's really damn athletic. I wonder why I don't see it more. And on that delayed blitz, you could really see it.
It was crazy because when I first was watching the play, I was like, dude, that was a terrible angle. Like, you just let him blow contain. And then I was like, oh wait, he got there.
Yeah.
It was
closed fast.
He closed really fast.
Yeah, Bryce Young was shocked. That man was surprised. He sees the edge drop back in coverage and you're like, okay, I'm fine. And then he just turns on the jets and it's like Bryce is like, wait, this dude is already on top of me. Oh my God. So
I was as shocked as Bryce was.
Yeah, that was a great job by Zach. So I hope he's continuing to get more comfortable. Nice to obviously see Nate Landman back out there with Caden Ellis. I thought those guys both had good games. I think this might have been DeMarco Hellam's highest graded game. And Hellam's officially got the start. He played 62 snaps. Richie Grant was more or less benched. He played only 7 snaps. And again, this brings me to my other question of okay, I think that one was justified, right? We had seen Richie Grant cost the team the game the previous week. I mean, it wasn't just him, but he'd been playing poorly. I think he's the 79th of 80 graded safety on PFF. So
not ideal.
That's not great. The one I don't get is the Mike Hughes thing. And I know they paid him, and I know UCF legend, it pains me, so if anyone's going to give Mike Hughes the benefit of the doubt, it's going to be me. Okay. But I hate to say this, but I know he's one of Jerry Gray's guys. He drafted him. He's been a big supporter of him. And I think he typically has gotten some of the best play out of Mike Hughes that we've seen. But I can't believe we're taking D. Alford off the field. I don't know what else D. Alford could do to show that he's a better corner and a better run defender. I know someone was like, oh, well, he's bigger. They like him more as a run defender. He hasn't been a better run defender than D. Alford. He hasn't done it this year, certainly. That one is puzzling to me. I mean, I'm not going to sit out here and claim it's because, Jerry Gray likes him better. I don't really think that's it. But I'm wondering if there's just an edict that's come down that's we need to make changes to save the season, and they just start and they're just okay, well, Clark Phillips, you're starting over Jeff Okudah, which I don't disagree with that one nearly as much. Clark Phillips did get cooked, but Jeff Okudah came in after Clark Phillips got benched, which also is stupid. If you're going to start him, just start him. And then Jeff Okudah got cooked worse when he came in, so it's I don't think that was a bad idea. I just don't understand the Hughes thing at all. Because D. Alford was clearly healthy. He was returning punts. So,
no, I mean, you bring up a couple good points there, because the question for me is, I would understand it. Let's say if you decide to sit Jeff Okudah this whole game, right? Which I would understand just from the standpoint of, hey, you're on turf. I think it's an ankle injury and it's bad weather, so it's going to be slippery. Like you don't want to do anything that aggravate it even more. But like you said, to your point, then you put him in the game. And yeah, Clark, as much as we've been hyping him up, I'm still a Clark Phillips fan and believer. Don't get this twisted. He had a rookie game.
Yeah.
Rookie games happen. And especially when you're going up against a very savvy veteran like Adam Thielen, like you're going to get got sometimes. It's part of the game. But to your point, it's initially like what I just talked about, the Jeff Okudah ankle situation. I thought that was also going to be part true to maybe that's why Mike Hughes was playing, in terms of, again, bad weather, what kind of game it's going to be, a lot of runs, want a better run defender in there. But I mean, how many times have we gone on the show and talked about D. Alford playing the run very well? You want to talk about his size all you want, but
it doesn't matter sometimes.
Really good against the run. Exactly. Yeah. Exactly. So no, it's a good question. And again, whenever Ryan Nielsen talks this week, just like I've told you before, I still have questions as to why we don't put hands on outside receivers certain times when we run cover 2.
Right.
I'd also want to ask him, hey, what was the thought process of Mike Hughes over D. Alford, especially when we've seen D. Alford play good football. The reason why I'm asking the questions too, right? Because I know sometimes we phrase it as a, why are you playing Mike Hughes kind of thing, right? I kind of want to do it the other way, right? Like, why didn't you play D. Alford, right? Like that is more, I want to highlight D. Alford and how good he's been, in terms of how I phrase it.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that's a more positive framing as well. And, and this wasn't like a terrible Mike Hughes game or anything either. Like, I thought he was mostly solid. So it's not even that. It's just, I don't understand the thought process behind it. But again, it's like, it's kind of nitpicking with the defense at this point, because they're holding a team to 9 points and the offense can't get it done. Which is a good segue into talking about the offense, which I don't know about you. I think this was the worst game of the season. It was definitely the hardest watch. And, the conditions weren't good. They're playing some backups on the offensive line. They made Drew Dahlman active and then didn't play him, which we're going to talk about. But nothing worked in this game. The one thing that worked, they hit one big play to Johnny Smith. That was literally the entire offense. There was nothing else the entire game. It was embarrassing. Desmond Ridder gets him down the field at the end and just throws the worst interception of the season. Bijan fumble. We can't have that. So, people are like, oh, Kevin, you want Bijan to be the bell cow? Yeah, he should be the bell cow. He needs to not fumble.
What you picked him for.
Yeah, he needs to not fumble. I mean, it's not like he's fumbling at like an egregious rate. I mean, I think he has close to 220 total touches and has fumbled 3 times now. So that's like a little over 1%, like 1.5-ish%, which is like slightly on the high side, but not egregious at this stage. So but again, you can't have it. You need your guy, like Tyler Algier, one of the most reliable ball carriers in the NFL. I think he's fumbled like 1 time in his career or something in 2 seasons now. So like, and it's also bad luck that Bijan's lost all 3 of the fumbles. Like, I mean, you don't usually lose all of them, but you still can't do it. So that's, if you had a criticism of Bijan, it would be please hold on to the football. But he's a rookie. Typically rookies get a little bit of a pass there, but so I'm not going to get on him too much about it, but you got to hold on to the football. But Desmond Ridder, man, that pick ended his starting career. I mean, it literally did end his starting career. My goodness.
There are a lot of things.
There's a lot. Yeah.
So I'll go top down.
Yeah.
Right. It was frustrating to watch this game and see the concepts and just how open the playbook was for Bryce Young and that offense versus how limited things were for us. Right. That's kind of where I do want to start. And look, for everyone is going to be, oh my gosh, here he goes blaming coaching again. I'm blaming everybody. I'm just starting here. In terms of, you see that design, right, to get Jonnu open on the play you're talking about. Beautiful play call. Beautiful. Yeah. It's like, why can't we see more of that? To an extent, it almost feels like at this point in time, Arthur Smith and Desmond Ridder are actually made for each other because they're the same person. In terms of every once in a while, you get this moment of brilliance. And it's just like, you can do this. Like, wow. Right? I mean, obviously, going into this week, everyone loved to talk about, Desmond Ridder in the fourth quarter. He's like a different kind of guy, right? And we can highlight this play, this throw, that throw. Say, oh, yeah, you can do this. But what frustrates you so much is you don't get that consistently.
Yeah.
So that's what frustrates me with Arthur Smith. Like, he keeps showing moments here and there. Like, you really can dial up some stuff. Just, I don't see it all the time.
No, that's the problem.
So exactly. So look, that's going to be it for my coaching spiel for right now. We will get back to it because, again, we're going to talk about quarterback changes. But look, offensive line, as much as we praise the effort, how good they looked last week, mixture group, they look like a backup group of offensive linemen this week. I know you talked about Drew Dahlman. So he was active, but the context with that was he was active in case of emergency.
Yes.
So it wasn't, for people maybe speculating, did he get benched for so-and-so? No,
I didn't think it was that.
Yeah. It's a high ankle sprain. Like, those usually don't get better in a week. Right. Mm-hmm. So it was in case of emergency, break the glass. And that's when he would have been in. But also I think at the same time, we still didn't do many favors to the offensive line in terms of, I still would like, again, to see more of a downhill running attack instead of trying to get sideline to sideline and whatnot, especially against that Carolina defense. Brian Burns, as we know how good he is, but also on the other side, Derek Brown's so good. He can set up contain from a B gap, from a 3 technique, which again, it's pretty incredible. You got to be really good to do that. He can do that and did it consistently. So I'd rather see us try to get more downhill, which once again we didn't do.
Yeah.
Because when we started doing it, Tyler Algier, shocker, was getting consistent gains, right? Like, it's crazy how it works. And then, like I said, overall, you talked about Bijan. Look, I think overall, like, if you look at the totality of his career, he's going to be fine, right? But how I look at him right now, at least in terms of ball security, is, and this is actually great because he has somebody in his own locker room he can talk to about this, is what Drake London was last year. Thinking about some of the things that some of the games and moments where Drake fumbled, right? Like, one of the big ones I'm thinking of, we're right there in the red zone against the Chargers.
Yeah.
And he's trying to take on 3 guys, one of them being Khalil Mack, which is not an easy ask, and Khalil Mack strips him. We get no points out of that. So, it's just one of those things where, again, when you have a game like this, everything has a microscope focus on it. Because this team has no room for error, especially on offense. So, he's going to have to work on it. I think obviously part of it too is, he's so good. He was so good at Texas that sometimes you're not used to all these guys around you.
Yeah.
And
you think you have a lead.
Yeah.
Like you don't think these guys can catch you.
Exactly.
And part of it, to me, I think he's trying to carry the team. Like, he's trying to will the team to victory. He's trying to make the play. He's like, and I think this happens to a lot of these young, high drafted players. Like you mentioned, Drake London. They're like, I have to will this team to a victory. We're struggling.
Right.
We got to get this win. I'm going to make a play. And you're so focused on making the play and getting the extra yardage that the ball, you sort of take it for granted. And it's something that a lot of players deal with, especially young players. But I think it's, a lot of it is mental. It's like, I have to be the difference maker. I have to make this play because otherwise we're going to lose this game. And then the ball security, or you, instead of just going down or going to the sideline, you're like, I got to get these extra yards. And that leads to, the problems, because the ball security, it's not something that is on his tape. It's not something that was a problem at Texas. It's really not something that I suspect will be an issue long term. But again, it's one of those welcome to the NFL moments. And that's the thing with this offense, right? Everything is on the knife's edge. So even a mistake like one single fumble lost is going to cost you the game. And unfortunately, that wasn't the only mistake. Because if that was the only one, if Ridder doesn't throw that pick at the end, they're probably fine. They're probably winning this game. by like 1 or 2 points, or something like that, and it's ugly as hell, and we're probably still having the same criticisms of the game, except we're saying, well, but they're still alive and there's still a little bit of hope,
right?
Instead of the end is nigh, So
Because it's a mix of everything, right? I mean, like
yeah,
for one point, you talk about a young guy trying to do too much. That is the epitome of Desmond Ridder and a lot of the mistakes that he makes. Because what's so frustrating about that interception? There are a lot of things that are frustrating, but one part is he's like 2 steps away from just go out of bounds, let's see another play, right? Or you can throw the ball away, all these different things. No, you decide you're going to rotate your body, throw back to, back towards the field, which, as everyone knows, quarterback no. And you throw the pick. So, that's the frustrating part about it is, again, like, part of it, maybe he just really isn't good enough, which, I'm not saying that's out of a realm of possibility, but I can also put on Desmond Ridder at times too. Like, dog, you're just trying to do too much. That's really it. You lost your job and in point to what you said because you tried to do too much. Yeah. And what makes it even more frustrating, look, even if you don't want to talk about the division, look at some of the wild card teams that you're in a fight with right now. You know what I'm saying? Like, again, it could be New Orleans, it could be Tampa, whomever in the division or the wild card. Both those teams won, right? They're 7-7. The Rams won. Like, they've caught fire as of late. They're at 7-7. So you have all these other teams. They did their job and kept things going, but now you really put yourself behind the 8 ball and what you're going to do, and really needing to cheer for this team to do this and that team to do that, and all that other good stuff.
Yeah, exactly. It's the end is nigh. And Seattle, who just beat the Eagles, and it's like I just no one's coming in to save this team. That we're not getting anywhere with this. And it's been a rough watch, and it's going to continue to be rough, unfortunately. I think over the next 3 weeks, but we'll continue to talk about it. I do want to shout out, like, the whole run game in this game completely fell apart. And it was, and like the right side, like, we weren't expecting much from them. But like Storm Norton was the highest graded run blocker, not named Jonnu Smith, which is also very sad because Jonnu Smith is a good pass blocking tight end, not so much a run blocker, but he actually did his job. Storm Norton had just a slightly above average run blocking grade, and that was the highest one. We got Bergeron had one of his worst run blocking games. He was in the 40s. Matthews had a really bad game, 45.7. Newsel was at 51, also not good. And then Kyle Hinton was right around average as well at 60. So you should have been able to rely on your seasoned starters, which Bergeron being a seasoned starter is kind of funny in this context. But like, compared to the other guys, he's a seasoned starter. And that side of the line collapsed. That's obviously inexcusable. I have some thoughts on why, the Falcons struggled to run the ball so much in this, and it has to do with the play calling, but we'll finish talking about the offensive line first. But like, the pass blocking was exceptional. Like, Brian Burns, these guys ate this offensive line alive in week 1. And this week, Matthew Bergeron, one of his best pass blocking games, 85 pass blocking grade for Matthew Bergeron. He's really coming on there. He's starting to get comfortable. Another vintage Jake Matthews game, almost an 80. Kyle Hinton in the high 70s, like off the bench, against Derek Brown. I mean, like, Storm Norton even was in the 70s. Like, the only guy that was below average pass blocking was Ryan Newsel, and he was only at like a 60, which is pretty much right at the average line. So like, they gave plenty of time in the passing game. They played their asses off in the passing game. It was just the run blocking that fell apart. And honestly, that's why I'm like, I don't think the offense, like, they missed some blocks and stuff, but like, I don't know if you noticed this too. Like, there were several plays where like they got beat so quickly and by everyone. It was just like, this defense knows exactly what this is going to be. They know the exact block that's coming. They know exactly where the ball's going. And there was like 4 people in the backfield. And to me, that's like, what can the offensive line even do if the defense is that aware of what the play is going to be? It's just, and like, obviously you still got to hold your block for more than like a half second, but like, if the other team knows exactly what's coming, you lose all advantage on the play if you're an offensive lineman. And, you've talked about it from a defensive line standpoint as well.
No, absolutely. And I think you hit the nail on the head in terms of, that's why I was saying, earlier on, in terms of looking at the two offenses and how things looked and felt more open for Carolina. Again, and you think about all the issues that Carolina's had this year, right? Whether, again, it's the lack of weapons. I mean, their O-line, look, we had, 3 starters missing, and I'd still say that our O-line is about as good as theirs when they have everybody there in terms of how bad things have been for Carolina. But even with that being said, it just felt like their offense was more open, and that was really frustrating, disappointing. Like I was looking at some of the play action that they were doing, but also not even the fact that they were doing play action is when they were doing it. Like we'll be in 3rd and 11 running play action. Ain't nobody falling for a run fake there. I think and like that's a recurring pattern. Think about when we did
They did that like 3 times in this game. They ran on 3rd and 7+. Like but maybe you sneak it in one time, but like
maybe once, and especially like if you're in a spot where it's like, okay, this is 2 down territory, right?
Yeah.
So maybe it's 3rd and 7 from Carolina's 43. So somewhere around there. Like, okay, I get it. But remember even last week, that final drive against Tampa Bay, the first play that we ran was a play action, it was like a toss play action. No one's thinking you're running the ball here. You got to get all the way down the field to score a touchdown. Like, no one's going to buy it. That I guess that's part of what frustrates me with some of this is we run play action when no one's going to buy the play action. But also when you do that, more times than not, you either take somebody else out the route tree or you delay them getting into the route tree because, again, they have to run out the fake. So I just, from that standpoint, right, I just didn't understand it. And like you said, to your point, look, everyone knows we love to run outside zone. We love to run stretch. They were all over it. And that's what I was talking about Derek Brown, too, in terms of there are some plays he contained. You didn't even need the defensive end out there. Derek Brown contained it by just lining up as 3 tech. But obviously it's one of those things where, again, I have to say this subjectively in terms of, hey, it is what it is. O-line, you still got a job to do, find a way to get it done. And in a lot of the situations they didn't. So, we struggle with it in the run game.
Yeah. And this is sort of a good seg into just the overall issue with the team. It's lifeless, it's directionless. The biggest thing is like this team has needed to make adjustments all year to keep the run game fresh, to keep the pass game fresh. And it seems like the adjustments are to just scale it back and simplify it more and more. And not only has that not resulted in them executing better, it's just made it so that every defense knows exactly what's coming, and it's getting uglier and uglier by the week. And like, I just don't understand the thought process. It's like the whole team is a deer in the headlights. Like it's like the car's coming and you can't get out of the way because you're stunned by the lights, And if we were a deer, we know there's like physiological reasons why the deer freeze up, in the headlights. But Arthur Smith is not a deer. This is a man who knows a car's coming, and they're not getting out of the way. And I don't know why they're not getting out of the way, Jordan. Why aren't they getting out of the way? Save yourself. Like, do something.
It's funny because I remember, I think it was last week was when the quotes came out from Arthur Blank, of barring a collapse, everything's safe. And I hate that I'm on this. Here I go again. In terms of, look, I told y'all a few weeks ago, I'm not going to be on the fire Arthur Smith thing. I know he's going to be back and yada, yada, yada. That train's back today. It's back because I don't know what signifies more of a collapse than losing that game and how you lost it. I don't know what signifies more of a collapse of having the easiest schedule you'll probably ever get and still finding a way to not win this division and have a losing record. I just don't know what the collapse is, but to your point, remember what Caleb McGarry said too at the beginning of the year about how complex everything is and feels that one person is just step off here or there, the whole thing just falls apart. So to your point, it's, well, okay, I've seen what it looks like when it was complicated. Still kind of looks like this, but it's also still looking like this when it's simplified, if that is the case. So what does that tell you? again, we're in games and we're winning games because this is a top 10 defense. Like,
Eighth now.
We're literally, like we're literally the fact that they're saying, and I had to say earlier, like, shame on this defense for not holding them to 6 points. Otherwise, we would have won. Like again, like I said, it's just crazy.
Yeah, this is not. This can't be real life. Like if you're actually out here being like, wow, the damn defense. If they could just hold that 6-point lead, we would have won this game. It's like,
is this how the 2000s? 2000. If there are any Ravens fans out there, please chime in. Is this how y'all felt like in 2000? Or it's just like, hey, the defense doesn't. If Ray Lewis doesn't make this person fumble, or we can't get off the field and hold somebody to 6 points, they fail. Like that's what it is right now for us. Yeah. And no, I'm not saying this defense is as good as the 2000 Ravens. I'm not. But the point being, we all know the story of defense carried that team, right?
Yeah.
All the way to the Super Bowl win against the Giants. But that is what it feels like, where it's, again, we nitpick almost one drive every single week for the defense. The reason why is because, well, we have to. You let Tampa score on that last drive. Shame on you. Oh yeah, let's see what the offense did. Oh, that's right. They could have had 30 plus points and didn't. You look at this game. Yeah, we could have scored. And the crazy thing for me was why I was so upset at Desmond Ridder throwing that pick. It really was, hey, we get a field goal right here. This might be it. We can win this game 10-6. And that doesn't happen. So yeah, like, to your point of the analogy, like the deer in the headlights, you can't move. It's just one of those things where I just feel like, well, you can't move if you don't know what to do in a situation, right? Your fight or flight has to kick in that moment. And if you don't have that gene, I can't ask you to do it. And so that's not on the players per se for me. I mean, it is because they're out there, but that starts at the top.
Yeah,
it starts at the top.
It does, and that's the biggest reason why. I mean, I know you've been done for a long time with Arthur Smith in particular. Now, I want to clarify because this has been something that I've struggled with more because this is the first year that I've had, or this is the first regime I've had actual access to I can actually get to know the coaching staff, get to talk to these guys, get to interact with them. And it's different then. It's what I think I know, and this is not like an elitist thing. It's like fans, you don't know the person in a deeper way other than just seeing them on the screen, and that's all you can do. That's just, it's a limitation, right? I mean, maybe if you go to training camp, you can hear him talk a little bit, or he might come shake hands or do whatever. But getting to interact with Arthur Smith now for 3 training camps and to know him and have lighthearted chit chat and all this stuff, it makes it harder to have these conversations just naturally because he's not a picture on a screen to me. He's not a caricature. He's not just some villain with a face that I can make a punching bag. So it does change things, and I want people to understand that. I feel conflicted. I'm not calling for Arthur Smith to be fired. I don't want Arthur Smith to be fired. I want the team to be better. I want the Falcons to be successful. And that requires a change, in my opinion. But it's firing Arthur Smith to punish him for the Falcons not being good enough. I'm not about that. That's
right.
That's not, we don't need to punish someone. We want the team to be better. And that's where I am with Arthur Smith. I think that we've seen enough. I think that Arthur Smith had good ideas. We're on record talking about how we liked the ideas. We liked the decision to kind of zig where the NFL was zagging, to go for the heavier personnel, to go back to a run heavier, balanced offense to counteract the cover 2 that everyone's playing, and the emphasis on the nickel and all these things.
Mm-hmm.
What we were sold, I think, was a good idea, which is why I'm also hesitant to get on Arthur Blank too much, because I agreed with what was being said. I was like, I think this is a good idea. They were going for all these different things. We're going to emphasize tight end. We're going to run 12 personnel instead of 11. We're going to really emphasize the run game. We're going to make the quarterback not such a necessity that we can't succeed until we get the next, Justin Herbert or whatever. All these things made sense. And I think Terry Fontenot and Arthur Smith did the right things for 2 years to set this team up. Year 3, fair or not, is where we had to see something. It didn't have to be perfect. It didn't have to be Super Bowl, but they had to be taking a step forward. They had to be showing we're building something special. It may not be done, but we're building something, and we can hang our hat on this, or we can, this is what fans can expect next year, or we know the holes we need to patch, and I think the realistic among us realize, like, well, either Ridder's going to be it, or they're going to know that they need to get a quarterback in 2024, and that was expected. Like, I don't think most of us were expecting Ridder to be a top 15 quarterback. I think I said, I think he'll be somewhere in that, 18 to 23 range, and if he was that, they'd probably be okay. Unfortunately, he's not that, but the one thing you couldn't do, Jordan, is go backwards in the third year. And that's why Arthur Smith is probably going to be fired, because you can't go back.
Yeah. I first off, I appreciate your transparency, right? Because to your point about, there's a person behind just, what we see on TV. And, the thing for me is, I always say this too. I hate seeing people get fired, especially in coaching, because it's not just them that gets affected. Families got to move. Now what happens with this coach too, and that coach, it's a whole trickle down effect of changes that happen, right? When someone gets fired. Trust me, I get it. Dan Quinn is my guy. I love Dan Quinn. And again, he was the head coach of the staff that gave me the opportunity for, albeit it was just 3 days, still it's 3 days more than most, to be an Atlanta Falcon, put on that helmet, go out to practice and all that. So he was in our meeting rooms because, obviously, at his core, Dan Quinn's a D-line guy. So, I met Arthur Blank and got to shake his hand, talk to him. All those guys for me too, they're people. And that's why, again, it was tough when it was coming towards the end, and you could just feel it, right? You could sense it that, Dan Quinn's time is about to be done in Atlanta. I wasn't saying that I wanted to go because I didn't like him. It's like you said, what the most important thing is, we're here because we are at our core and our origins Falcons fans, right? Me being an Atlanta Falcon for 3 days meant so much because I grew up a Falcons fan, right? Going to games at the Georgia Dome. I was up at the Metrodome in '98 for the NFC Championship. That's why a big part of, the core of why we're here. That's why a lot of the viewers are here. And so at the end of the day, it's what do I think is going to be best for the team, right? And right now, it's with what we've seen through almost 3 years now. And again, I think 3 years is very fair because we didn't say that. They said it.
Yeah.
No, they said this is a 3-year
year 3 of a 3-year plan.
Yeah, this is year 3 of a 3-year plan. So that's on them. But again, with what I have seen, I just, like I said, I just feel like what would be best for the Falcons going forward is, again, you have a change of leadership.
Yeah. And it sucks. Everyone that's oh, I don't want to start over, it's going to set this team back. Yeah.
Set us back from what?
Well, I mean, we're already bad, so it's they're...
That's what I'm saying. Set us back from where?
But yes, you do have to start over, and it's probably going to be a new offensive scheme and whatever, but, you can't just not make a move because you don't want to start over. And they don't have to start completely over. I think you get another offensive coach and you do your damnedest to convince this defensive staff to stay. You do everything you can, make Ryan Nielsen assistant head coach. I don't care what you got to do. And if you don't get the offensive guy you want, make Nielsen the head coach. I don't have a huge problem with that either. I mean, I think the NFL is definitely going towards the offensive coach being the head coach just because guys get poached like that. I mean, who are the top candidates this year? All offensive guys, right? All guys that are going to get poached. And if you don't have that guy as your head coach, if it does work out and you do strike gold on that offense, you don't want him leaving in 2 years to go fix somebody else's offense. So, there's plenty of, and this is going to be a good group of guys, right? I mean, everyone's obsessed with Ben Johnson. Don't get your hopes up about Ben Johnson because every single team is going to be rolling out the red carpet for Ben Johnson. And to be fair, especially if the Falcons lose out, get close to a top 5 pick, they will be very attractive. especially like if Fontenot sticks around and they've got the cap space, they've got all the weapons. They just need a quarterback, and they've got a fringe top 5 pick and a regime that's willing to probably trade up if they need to get somebody. This will be an attractive job. And there's a patient owner, and that's the one. They have the space, they have the young roster, and they have the ownership that is very well respected. I know fans have a problem with Arthur Blank, but like coaches know Arthur Blank is going to give them a fair chance. He's not going to Panthers them and, fire them in 8 weeks with like a team that's terrible and scapegoat the head coach. So like the Chargers, who are probably the biggest competitor for Ben Johnson, have to deal with all of that baggage of the ownership not caring and, the rest of that roster being kind of a disaster. Yeah. And they do have Justin Herbert. That's the one thing that could be the equalizer because the quarterback, we know how important it is, but the Falcons will be very competitive. So if they don't get Ben Johnson, the name I keep coming back to is Joe Brady because there was legitimate interest from my understanding in Joe Brady pairing with Terry Fontenot before the decision was made to go with Arthur Smith. And, Joe Brady's got another chance. I think he was unfairly kicked out of Carolina. Again, Carolina making bad decisions with their coaching staff. What a surprise. He's now got another chance with the Bills and is crushing it. So I think,
Bobby Slowick.
Yeah, I love Bobby Slowick too. I think that he'll be on the list as well. Eric Bieniemy we've talked about. This is going to be a good group. And I think you have to go in a different direction. You have to find a way because the big thing for me is we're making another quarterback change, and this is now the third quarterback change. If you thought Taylor Heinicke was a better option, you had the runway to keep him the rest of the season, and you didn't. You went back to Desmond Ridder because guess what? Taylor Heinicke wasn't very good. Now I think we can all come back to the same talking point, which is, well, maybe the scheme sucks. And yes, it does. But like Taylor Heinicke's not saving this scheme. We've seen it. Like he doesn't that people are like, oh, they scored more points those weeks. I mean, am I the only one that saw him just sailing tons of passes and putting the ball in harm's way and not, I mean, he processed a little bit faster, but it's not like it was that much better. So again, it's like, this is the clearest sign that Arthur Smith has been told, like, your job is in danger now. Because I don't think you make this move otherwise.
I guess, the thing for me is, look, when you first brought in Taylor Heinicke, you already told him what you thought about him.
Yeah.
Right. In terms of, again, people talked about preseason and Desmond Ridder not playing in the preseason and all these different things. Right. My thing is you brought in this guy. And there was no competition. It was like, hey, we're bringing you in to beat Desmond Ridder's backup. So you straight up said you don't think he's better than Desmond Ridder. And like, at least, like that's how I read things, right? How you say things or what you say, it matters. Yeah. So that was, strike one. And again, look, I remember, a few weeks ago when Heinicke did start and turn the ball over, we read out what his stats were in his career, 7-year career of the turnovers that he has. Like the big reason why you're benching Desmond Ridder turns the ball over. So now you're benching someone who's turnover prone for someone who's turnover prone. Not have fun with that. Logan Woodside, get ready. But, the thing for me is just
Toledo legend.
Right. It's just like, I just sit here and again, to your point, I don't think Taylor Heinicke really elevates the scheme in any way that Desmond couldn't or didn't. This is like a twiddle your thumbs kind of thing, right?
It's desperation. That's what it is.
It absolutely is desperation, but isn't desperation also the same reason why you benched Taylor Heinicke in the first place to go back to Desmond Ridder? I get it. I think he hurt his hamstring in that game, but okay. Usually in situations, your starter gets hurt. Once they're feeling better, they go back to play. Right. You said what we saw from Desmond in the fourth, he wanted the ball, so we're going to go back to him. But you don't think Desmond still wants the ball? I think Desmond Ridder wants the ball. Say what you want about the dude, but I've seen enough of him to know and realize he can make every single mistake possible. The dude still wants the ball. Like he doesn't he doesn't shy away. Like, I do
Yeah,
commend him.
he is not mentally broken. Like, he is not.
He's not.
Like, he's still out there slinging it. It's not going great, but I will give him props for that. He is not mentally broken. And that's why I think he's gonna be an NFL player for a long time. Like,
he's gonna be a very good backup.
I don't think he's a starter at this point. Maybe he could get there one day, but backup, absolutely. Like, this is perfectly fine backup play most weeks, but again, backup. So
no, I agree with that. So again, it's just like you said, desperation, because the way I'm looking at it too is, what questions does this actually answer in terms of making this move? Like in terms, and not in terms of quarterbacks. Look, I think we got a lot of questions answered, especially at least for right now, about Desmond Ridder. But again, from leadership top down, I don't have any questions answered with you making this move.
No. And I think it only invites more questions. Like, if you thought Taylor Heinicke gave you a better chance to win, why wasn't he already playing?
Mm-hmm.
Why is he coming in now? And like, if you, to me, it's got to be that, like, okay, we need to make some changes to save your job. And like, they're making changes that they're not necessarily going to do anything. Like, it's not going to fix any problems, but like, they're going to try to make some changes and see what happens. And, the end is nigh, Jordan. I don't see this producing any dividends that are positive for this team, other than maybe winning another game and screwing over their draft pick. But again, they're not going to tank. Like, if they win another game, they win another game. They're going to try, and they should try. But I just don't see any scenario where you move the needle too much, because these were the two games you couldn't lose, right? You needed to beat the Bucs and you needed to beat the Panthers and if you did, you would be the narrative would be completely different. Two games, two completely different stories. You win both. Not only are people not calling for your job, you're like, wow, the Falcons are in the driver's seat. They're crushing it. They've got the NFC South all but locked up. You be on a 4-game win streak. Everything's different. You win one of those two games. You beat the Bucs and lose to the Panthers. It's like, okay, that sucks. If you lose to the Bucs, you beat the Panthers. It's like, okay, we're still in it. Whatever. You lose both. That's why this is over. Because again, we get to this crucial period of the season, December football. This is where you make it. This is where you make your money. This is where you prove yourself. And every year, the Falcons have failed in December. That to me is the biggest indictment of all. Like, this is where the crunch time is. And once again, you fail in the moments that are the biggest.
Look, again, it's 2 years in a row where you get towards the final parts of the season and the Falcons are actually playing in meaningful games. But you're playing meaningful games, you lose them. Yep. It's one thing to play them. It's another thing to win them. Because again, look, everyone can talk to me about the roster this and the roster that last year. Well, as bad as the roster was, you were right there with a chance to be first in the NFC South. Right? Like that's why I tell people, of like my clock on Arthur Smith started ticking last year, because to an extent, okay, if the roster is as bad as everyone says it was, well, that means he must have done a hell of a coaching job to get them there to that point. But also, like I said, and I've said so many times, I could also point to certain coaching decisions or game plan, whatnot, what have you, which is why the Falcons also fell out of that race last year.
Yeah.
And here's one of the things too. Because you talk about games, and obviously, you know me, I like to look at how things look and comparisons and things like that. You're going up against a team this week that finds himself right in the middle of a playoff push with a backup quarterback. So, talking about the Colts, the Gardner Minshew, right? I know about Gardner because he went to Washington State, but we see what Shane Steichen, again, big offensive name, right? We see the things that he can do and create with a backup quarterback for Indianapolis and make things work. So you're going to have a straight comparison, and so that, again, that's the thing for me of, I'm going to be really interested to see how that looks. Okay. And just, again, the same way I can compare offenses, it's not like Bryce Young in Carolina. It wasn't like the rain stopped all of a sudden whenever they went out on offense.
Yeah.
They played in the same weather that our offense did. And again, things looked a lot more open for them than it did for us. So that's why it's going to be another week where I'm just going to make a comparison and just watch it that way.
Well, exactly. And I think the Colts are a really good example to bring up, because this is a team I think that if you asked Falcons fans before the season, you would have been expecting to win this game. Like, oh, this is a rebuilding team. They got a new head coach. They're not bad, but like our roster is better. And I do think the Falcons roster is better. But the Falcons are significantly worse. The Colts are 8th in scoring. And it's all coaching. It's all coaching. The offensive line's not as good. Zach Moss, to his credit, he's been playing well, but he has a lower yards per carry than Bijan. Jonathan Taylor has missed most of the season. He's got a lower yards per carry than Bijan. The Falcons could have had Gardner Minshew. Are you telling me Gardner Minshew would be elevating this offense? Gardner Minshew's making way less money than Taylor Heinicke. They could have had Gardner Minshew. You're telling me that's the reason because Gardner Minshew's playing and the Falcons don't have a quarterback as good as... No, it's not. It's not the answer. What do you think the Colts defense is, Jordan? Where do you think they're ranked?
Oh man, I guess maybe middle of pack. I mean, I know my guy Defoe's over there. It's my dude.
Defoe's awesome. Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, I'd say probably somewhere about like 15, 16.
They're 27th in scoring.
Oh,
scoring
good
defense. And they are 8-6 because their offense functions.
Yeah.
Now they're a little bit better in terms of yards. They're 21st, but and like the big part of it is they forced a lot of turnovers on defense too. Like I think they're 3rd in turnovers forced. But again, like people are like, oh, the Falcons defense is bad because they don't force turnovers. That's the most random stat in all of football, defensive turnovers. Like,
yeah,
I'm telling you guys, like you'll have an offense or a defense that's number 1 in turnovers forced one year and then 32nd the next year. It's not that they changed anything. It's because it's almost entirely reliant on offensive mistakes to give you the football.
One thing that they will do though, they do get after the quarterback. They're 3rd and sack. So
they do. So like again, it's like it hasn't resulted in them limiting opponents' scoring, but they have given their offense more opportunities, and that's obviously helped them. So, but it comes back to like they don't have a better offensive personnel. They don't have a better offensive line. I don't know that Gardner Minshew's a better quarterback than like a significantly better quarterback than Taylor Heinicke. Like I think those guys are probably about the same. Taylor Heinicke's making more money. So it's not the people, it's the coaching. And to me, the one thing that I always will come back to over and over again, and this is the most unforgivable thing, is that the offensive line is better. You got Matthew Bergeron in there who struggled a little bit early, but has clearly come on. You have Bijan Robinson inserted. You sold fans like this is our cherry on top. We're going to get an elite running back that has all the stuff that Tyler Algier doesn't. What do you think their success rate in rushing is on the season?
Oh, this can't be good. Oh, what is it?
27th.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, and they're like 16th in overall yardage. It's like there is no excuse for this running game falling into the depths of shit that it has. And it's because it's not because the concepts are bad on their face. It's because there's no creativity. There's no change. This is the exact same scheme from last year. And it's even worse because now that you've added Bijan, you've just like telegraphed like when you had Algier carrying the load, it was like, well, we don't know if he's going to go inside or outside because he's getting the ball 25, 30 times. Now that they're doing this complete split, it's like Bijan comes on. Okay, it's either going to be a dump off to the flat, a screen, or he's running outside. And then if Algier comes in, it's like, okay, it's inside zone. Like, and this is exactly what we talked about at the beginning of the episode. It's the defense knows exactly what's coming. And you can't succeed in the NFL if you can't adapt. And not only have they not adapted, they've gotten worse. Like they've scaled it back even more. And it's leading to, I can't abide the offense not being able to run the football because that's Arthur Smith's calling card. That's the one thing he was able to do over the first 2 years when everything else was falling apart. Now the run game is also falling apart. And to me, that's the last straw because if you can't hang your hat on the run anymore, what do you bring to the team? I don't know.
I mean, it's like you said, that's what you're supposed to be all about. And the thing for me too, which I think just makes us all the more frustrating. And again, I'm saying this to say Bijan's going to be a dude. Like I really do.
I have no. I'm not. Player. Some people are like, oh, well, Bijan's just a one-trick pony. No,
he's going to be a great player.
No,
it's just like the two things that they said. Ball security's got to be better. I think another point with that too is sometimes he's a little too hesitant. Like if I think the perfect way I can look at this is, Warwick Dunn obviously was in Atlanta for years and is a phenomenal running back. He was great, but there was something to be said of if the hole wasn't fully there, he's going to sit there, tap his feet a little bit, try to hope something opens up, right? Bijan does that to an extent too, where it's like sometimes you just got to take what's there. You got to learn to just take what's there. I think that's what makes Tyler so effective. Tyler doesn't wait for anything. Tyler Algier is going to hit that hole. But what I was going to say in terms of that is what makes it even more frustrating is, remember, you had to do that, just set the Falcons rookie rushing record over 1,000 yards on the ground, and you decided we need to get a running back. And again, I'm not saying that as a knock on Bijan at all. Great player. But it's the fact of the matter of, to your point, you had all the success on the ground last year with that guy that got, I believe, in the 5th round. Mm-hmm. And then this year you bring in, this superstar, and you're actually getting worse on the ground. Like, you see what I'm saying? Like, that's where it's frustrating, right? To look at it in that light, just to add even more context of, we're talking about, when you're running the ball so well last year and you can't do it this year.
Yeah, exactly. And Bijan Robinson, bizarrely, people are like saying, "Oh, he's not that great." I mean, he's averaging 4.6 yards. He's averaging 4.6 yards per carry. He has 10 more carries than Algier this year, which to me is like, why did we bother drafting him if you were going to make him a 50-50 timeshare, right? Like, you could have got James Cook if you want to do that,
Sure.
Like, if you want someone to split a speed back to split reps with Algier, you don't draft a running back in the top 10 to make him a committee back. Like, I'm not saying give him 100% of the carries. That's ridiculous. But 75%. Like, what are the Panthers doing? Chuba Hubbard's get 25 carries. What are the Bucks doing? Rachaad White's getting 25 plus carries a game. Like, and again, it's like, oh, we're saving him. Saving him for what? You're not making the playoffs. Yeah. Like, what are you saving him for? So he's fresh for Hawaii at the end of the season. I hope he's sipping Mai Tais.
That's what it is. It is for the what's it the it's not the Pro Bowl anymore. It's the games or whatever it is. That's the
games. Yeah, he's gonna be real fresh for those. He's gonna do our team proud, I'm sure. But I'm just like, I have no problem with Tyler Algier. I think he's a perfectly capable running back 2, closer, physical, short yardage back. But he is not a creator. He's good at what he does. He's a good pass blocker. He's got reliable hands. If Bijan has to miss time, I think Algier can take 20 plus carries, no problem. You lose some dynamic ability, but your run game's functional. But like, the run game's not functional anymore. And it's not because the blocking got worse, and it's not because the running backs are worse. It's because it hasn't evolved, and defenses just know exactly what's coming. And no offense can be successful if the defense knows what's coming, because your entire advantage on offense rests in the defense having to spend that split second, or that, if you're better, even a whole second, trying to figure out what's coming, where your offensive linemen have that extra second to get to their mark, or to suck up a linebacker on a play action pass or something like that. And if they don't have that worry anymore, you're done. In the NFL, defenses are too good to get away with it. And in the passing game, like, I know people are like, oh, well, Matt Collins just sucks. The dude had like 800 yards last year. You're telling me now that, like, oh, well, he's just terrible. No, the scheme is terrible. I mean, Drake London's the only wide receiver that's doing the damn thing. I mean, that's what I don't get about the people that are like, oh, well, he just needs a quarterback. Arthur Smith just needs a quarterback. He picked this quarterback. He chose to give him no competition. He handed him the job on a silver platter. It didn't work out. But, like, you don't get a mulligan with that. Like, it's not like the quarterback was good last year.
I just keep asking people this, and no, this is not me saying, oh, well, let's check out Lamar Jackson. No, we can't praise the defense as good as it's been. Yeah. And then say you want to spend all that money on a quarterback who really wasn't never available, y'all. Like, let's be real about that.
That's the beginning and end of the conversation.
Yeah. He was never leaving Baltimore. Yep. But the thing for me is, with what I've seen in terms of the scheme, right? Like, trust me, I wish there were so many more times where I said, you know what, that was a good play call. Quarterback just wasn't right. Or, man, if we had this quarterback doing this or that, I'd feel better or different. Now, yeah, maybe we have a different quarterback. You don't have as many turnovers. I'll give you that. I'll give you that. But from what I've seen so far, scheme-wise, it's, do I really believe that I should trust this coaching staff to have, and I'm saying this in terms of, you get one of those big names, right, in the first round. Do I trust this staff to have that quarterback and build and develop with it? And again, the answer is no.
Right. Exactly. It's just you haven't earned the right to draft another quarterback. That's what you give that choice. Like, because if Arthur Smith comes back, like, are they even going to draft a quarterback? Because is that going to give a quick enough turnaround for him?
I feel like that's the only way that he gets extension on his career, is if he gets a quarterback to say, like, hey, I need time now to work with this guy. I think I fully believe that. And I think that once you get to the offseason, because I don't think he's thinking that now, but once you get to the offseason, I think that's what he's going to come across too. Yeah. But yeah, I mean, again, it's like, look, this isn't just me saying this. This isn't just Kevin Knight saying this. Again, listen to what other pros and former pros have said about this offense. Like, for the this whole year, right? Mm-hmm. We talked about what JTL Sullivan said. We talked about Kurt Bankert. We talked about Kurt Warner. Remember Jimmy Ward's quotes before the Houston game. Everybody is saying this about this offense, right? And what's there, what's not there, what they're doing, what they're not doing. So again, it's one of those things. If you don't want to believe me, you don't want to believe Kevin, that's fine. You can listen to literally almost anybody else in the football world. They've all been saying the same thing.
Yeah, and that's exactly it. Like, you could watch the JT O'Sullivan breakdowns from early in the season and watch them now, and it's the exact same problems, the exact same issues with the route tree, the exact same spacing issues, the exact same concept issues, the predictability, the being confused about what the design is, like, what's the point of this play. The offense is, it's just nonsensical to me. I don't know what the goal is on any given play. And that's the thing about offensive football, is like, you need to have a goal. Like, this play is a cover 2 beater, or this play is a chunk, like, this is our we're going for a chunk play here, or this is, for this situation or that situation, or this is what we're trying to achieve. And it just, like, you watch these breakdowns and it's like, it seems like they're just running routes. Like, there's not really a concept. I'm sure there is. Like, I don't think these guys are stupid. It's just like, we can't decipher what the concept is. And it on top of that, they're just making this so hard because they refuse to just feature playmakers. It's like, well, we got to get everyone involved. And, like, to a certain extent, yeah, you do. But, like, you don't have to get everyone. Like, you don't have to give, and I don't want this to feel like I'm targeting Patterson, but, like, you don't have to give Cordarrelle Patterson 5 or 6 carries. Like, maybe he's your return guy. Maybe he's a gadget player for you sometimes, but you don't need to take 6 carries away from Bijan. Like, I love Patterson.
I don't know what the Joker position is. I still don't.
I feel like Arthur Smith feels like he has to use every piece that he's acquired. He has to work every player into the game plan. He has to throw to Jonnu. He has to throw to Pitts. He has to throw to London. He has to throw to Patterson. He has to give everyone carries. Like, you're making it so hard. Like, what you should do is be like, well, we're going to go into this game with 3 main engines: Bijan Robinson, Drake London, Kyle Pitts. And whichever one is more advantageous on this play, or whichever one's most open, you go to that guy. And if they're not, then you go to someone else. And occasionally we're going to need a play from somebody else, and we need guys in case there's injuries. But, like, I've never gone into a game feeling like, oh, the game plan this week was to feature Drake London. Like, even in his big game, I feel like that was a coincidence. Like, there wasn't like the game plan was just chuck it to Drake London 12 times. It was like, well, we're going to just chuck it deep, and Drake London's going to make some miracle balls happen. And then now it looks like we actually utilized him properly. But it's like I just don't get it. And that's why this is over. Like, we can't go into 2024 with this offense again. It's been figured out. It doesn't work. And I don't even know what the goal is anymore, because the run game doesn't work. The pass game doesn't work. The quarterbacks that you've chosen are bad. All of the pieces you brought in are underperforming relative to expectations, except Jonnu. Shout out to Jonnu. Nothing you've done has worked. All of the concepts everything that we were sold on isn't working together. I don't know why you would just be like, oh, well, if we just replace the quarterback, this will all work. Like we're fine with this concept, because what Arthur Smith brings is the concept. The concept doesn't work. We know now. Or maybe it could work if it had continued to evolve, but the evolution stopped last year. There's been no evolution as far as I can tell. It looks exactly the same as 2022. So
yeah,
to me, there's no future with this scheme. Like if Arthur Smith could have made adjustments to fix this scheme, I sure as hell hope he would have done it by now. Because if you're waiting until now to make an adjustment, like it's too late. Like it's over. So, and that's the sad thing, is that I think we all like the idea. We all hope that this would work. It clearly doesn't work. Whatever they've built, it doesn't work. So that's why the end is nigh, right? Because what they've been building for 3 years fundamentally does not work on any level. So that's why the end is nigh.
Yeah. No, I mean, I don't really have much else to add to that. It's just
yeah.
The only thing I could say is, look, there really is a situation and opportunity for everybody in this offense, was there should be, right? Like, for example, you talk about Cordero Patterson. He has his role. Again, I don't think the Saints game plays out the way it does if it's not for him bringing that energy, running over people, running through their face masks,
Love
right? I don't think that happens. But at the same time, it's the reason why I said I still don't know what the Joker position is.
They don't even use him in the passing game.
Well, and that's the thing for me, is because, again, you talk about like, hey, this is supposed to be a cover 2 beater. This is a man beater, yada, yada, yada. You have a guy that has wide receiver experience in your backfield. And when you think that they're going to be in a man cover situation, how do you not try to get him matched up on linebackers or whomever else to win those reps, right? Like I don't know. So that's why I'm sitting here. Like, for example, if you were to tell me, you know who I guess to an extent actually personifies a Joker position player? Taysom Hill.
Yeah.
Right? Because I can't tell you he's a tight end. I can't tell you he's a quarterback. I can tell you he's a running back. I can't tell you he's a receiver, but he does line up everywhere, right? So if you're asking me what is it personifies as a Joker, that's what I'd say it is, right? And that's not how we use or align Cordero Patterson. So that's why I'm like I said, I'm sitting here confused of what exactly is that.
Yeah. I mean, it's just it's rough to watch, and that's the saddest thing, is that we want to enjoy this team, and you can either look at this one of two ways. One way is that the pieces are bad. So Bijan Robinson, Kyle Pitts, Drake London, all the offensive linemen, those guys aren't good enough. And if we just get the right ones in here, then it'll all work, Or the scheme is bad and these players aren't to blame. And everyone deserves a slice of the blame. It's not a blameless thing. But, like, it is not reasonable to think, like, maybe you think Kyle Pitts is a bust. Whatever. I disagree. But that's your right to think that. Drake London ain't a bust, clearly.
Mm-hmm.
Bijan Robinson is much better than he's being utilized here in Atlanta. And I just can't, I can't do this next year. I can't be like, we've got all these pieces that we're just not going to use. Like, I don't know how you sell Arthur blank on this. Like, well, Arthur, it didn't work in year 3, but like, this is what we're going to do next year. Like, I'm going to fire my whole coaching staff and bring in a whole new So why are you here? Like, the whole thing you assembled doesn't work. So why, like,
in year 4 of my 3-year plan?
Yes. Okay, we're gonna extend the plan a year. I'm applying for an extension. You're like it's like finals time, and you're like, actually, I haven't done my paper yet. Can I get another extension for a semester to finish my paper?
There was a team option at the end of it. We just didn't.
Yeah. Exactly.
Talk about that part.
Yeah, and that's the saddest thing, is that like everything was set up into this season where Arthur Smith like didn't necessarily have to be a world beater. The team just had to take a small step forward, compete for the playoffs, look competent doing it. And like, really the offense just had to be functional and look good, and the run game had to keep working, all those things. Like, but you can't fall apart, because if you fall apart, what are we hanging our hat on? Nothing.
Right.
Nothing's working. The run game's not working. The pass game's not working. Schematically, it doesn't make sense. Fundamentally, it doesn't make sense. We've collected the players for 3 years for this, and this is the outcome. And people are like, oh, well, he never had a quarterback to execute it. That was their decision also. They made the choice about the quarterback they wanted. They're like, oh, there wasn't good enough quarterbacks, or, oh, they thought they were keeping Matt Ryan. Like, again, like, I don't give you a pass for your choices. Like, you set this all up. It's not like you had no options to get quarterbacks. Again, we talked about it. Like, are you trying to sell me that Gardner Minshew, if they'd signed Gardner Minshew instead of Taylor Heinicke, that this would all be working? Like,
right.
I don't think so, because I don't think the quarterback is not helping. Let's be honest. But the whole point was that we didn't need an elevator. We didn't need a quarterback that was going to overcome the shortcomings of the scheme. We just needed a distributor, because we have all these weapons and the scheme is going to fix the problems. It's the opposite. The scheme is dragging down the quarterbacks. It's dragging down the offensive weapons. We're not going to have a 1,000-yard receiver, more than likely. Will we even have a 1,000-yard rusher at this point? Bijan's at 801.
He'll probably get there, yeah.
He needs another big game. 3 more games to go. But, like, I can't accept this. And you shouldn't accept it either. And Arthur Blank shouldn't accept it. And I don't think he will at this point. Because people get on Arthur Blank, and I know there was reporting coming out like, oh, he doesn't want a regime change. Of course he doesn't want a regime change. Nobody wants a regime change.
Yeah.
He doesn't have a choice. Like, he doesn't have a choice. Like, Arthur Smith has forced his hand with this late season collapse, which, fateful that those were the words that were used right before the collapse started. Literally, the second that was uttered, it was like, well, we lost to the Bucs and we lost to the Panthers. There we go, late season collapse. So, and it, I don't think, and I think the only way that he keeps his job is if they make the playoffs at this point. So, there's still a slim chance for that. It's like 10%, but I wouldn't count on it. I think they have a much higher chance of losing out than making the playoffs. So,
well, I mean, it's like I said, look, what, and I would have been curious, and this is where, again, when I put on my journalism hat, I just wish people would ask more follow-up questions.
Yeah.
Because that would have been my follow-up, is what characterized, like, what would be considered a collapse?
Yeah.
Because, again, for me, for this team this year, not winning the division, especially not making the playoffs, and losing to the team you just lost to, all 3 of those, that's a collapse to me.
Yeah.
Right? Now, Arthur Blank's definition might be different, right? Like, maybe it is you lose out and we go, 6-11 on the year, and that's what he sees it as. I mean, either way, it's just one of the things, like I said, I just really would be curious for Arthur Blank of what did he consider when he said that, right? Like, what would he consider a collapse?
Right. Yeah, and I think this is what he would consider. Like, losing to the Panthers, that's the biggest nail in the coffin that you could possibly do. Like, you could probably come at, like, if you had just won like a handful of these last 5 games or whatever, like if you had gone 2-3 but beat the Panthers, maybe you can squint and make that work. But losing to the Panthers, in this manner, I think that was the nail in the coffin. And if they don't win out the rest of the way, I think we all know what's going to happen on Black Monday. So, obviously, we're not wanting anyone to be fired, as we said earlier in the episode. We just want the Falcons to be better, and I think there's only one way that we move forward, and that's with new leadership and the coaching staff. On the offensive side, defensive coaching staff,
y'all
doing what you're doing. I question the Mike Hughes thing, but again, like, if I'd probably be angrier about that if I wasn't like, well, everything else they're doing seems to be working, so I'll give them the benefit of the doubt on that. But, like, man, we can't go into 2024 like this. Like, maybe Arthur Blank, like, if they don't fire Arthur Smith, he's like, it's going to be everywhere. Like, everyone's going to be saying, wow, this was a terrible decision. Can't believe, like, it wasn't like Dan Quinn where a lot of people were like, well, they finished strong in 2019. He took them to a Super Bowl. No, it's like this offense regressed from like 15th to 27th, and like they lost a bunch of their last several games. They lost to the 2-12 Panthers, and the Falcons decided to bring him back. Like, I just don't like. He's gonna be eaten alive. Like Arthur Blank is gonna be eaten alive by fans, by media. Like, is he really gonna do that for Arthur Smith? Like he's gonna go to bat for him to that extent? Like, I know people know that. Like, Arthur Blank is patient, but he's never kept a coach for 3 losing seasons ever. So like, I people seem very confident that he's gonna keep him, and like, there's nothing he could do to get fired. Like, I disagree. Like, I think he's already set the stage.
Yeah, I mean, it was like I was before this week, confident that Arthur Smith was going to be around, but again, you lose that game that way to that team, I got to change my way of thinking.
Yeah, can't abide that, and as fans, we should expect more too. Like, I have nothing personal against Arthur Smith, but like we have to have a different direction, because we can't waste another year with this. Like, we can't. We have to move on. And maybe it would work with a better quarterback, but if the quarterback was that important, they should have done something about it. They didn't. So, making that big of a mistake at the most important position again, I think, is a big indictment. So, we could probably go on for another 30 minutes, but let's wrap this up. It's been long. We have a lot of thoughts about this, and we'll continue to have thoughts over the rest of the season. But Jordan, really appreciate your time today, guys. He's Jordan Watkins at Big 75 Fella, host of the Falcons Fade podcast. Let people know where they can find that and anything else you're working on.
Yeah, you can catch it again wherever you get your podcasts, whether it's Apple Music, Spotify, you name it. We're on all of those. So yeah, it was fun doing our recap show yesterday. That was a blast. Sarcasm. But we'll be previewing the Colts game later this week. It'll probably come out on Saturday. So yeah, be ready to check that out. Brought to you by Stadium Rant.
Absolutely. Check it out, guys, for sure, to get more of those great takes. I'm Kevin Knight at Falcoholic Kevin. You can check me out on the Twitter X, whatever the hell it's called. Thank you guys for watching the Dirty Birds and Brews podcast, or listening to the Dirty Birds and Brews podcast. If you're watching, leave us that like and subscribe on the YouTubes. If you're listening, leave us that 5-star review on your podcast platform of choice. If you want to support the show, you can do so by signing up for a channel membership on YouTube. Get early access to this episode and others, as well as some other cool perks. And the same thing on Patreon. If you want those early access podcast episodes, sign up there on the Patreon. It's patreon.com/Falcoholic Live. Today's show was, of course, brought to you by BetOnline. Thanks again for all your support, folks. Thanks for watching and enduring this season with us. I hope there will be a brighter future. That's what we want more than anything, is to have a fun team to talk about. And unfortunately, probably going to have to make a change at the top to get that done. So we'll see what happens over these past 3 weeks, but not hopeful. But, if they do lose out, there's a decent chance they're picking 6th, 7th-ish, maybe 8th again. That would be the first time in NFL history that a team has picked 8th 3 years in a row. So keep that streak going. But yeah, guys, thanks again for watching. We'll see you next time on the Dirty Birds and Brews podcast. Have a great day, folks.